John Bishop and his family settled in Titirangi in 1855 and set up a farm on the old Huia Road. They converted the upstairs room of their home into a classroom for the 8 children. Their tutor, Mr. Patterson, also taught the neighbours' children for 30p a week. The Bishops also ran garden parties with entertainment such as target practice on the rifle range.
Hi Janice, please tell us about your family connection with the Bishops.
My family are the Spear family, and I'm the great-great-granddaughter of John Bishop and Elizabeth MacLeod Bishop.
How did the Bishop family come to settle in the Titirangi area?
John Bishop went into partnership with a Thomas Canty, and they started a sawmilling business in Freeman's Bay. They bought land in Henderson and they bought land in Titirangi.
Who was Essie Hodge?
Essie Hodge was born in 1902, and she was the daughter of John Joseph Bishop. He was the youngest son of John and Betsy.
Can you recount some of her stories about the classes in one of Pew's sheds?
We sat 2 to a desk. The wooden desks had 2 slits along the top into which we put our slates. The pencils and everything lay in a groove the length of the top of the desk.
What kind of games would the children play?
While the girls, for the most part, played genteel singing games like Poor Jenny is a Weeping, Green Gravels, Drop the Handkerchief, or Hide and Seek, or Tag, the boys were rough and rumbustious.
What were supplejack swings?
Well, supplejack was a plant, a very thin creeper-like plant that was very, very strong, and they made the swings out of them out in the bush when they were playing, because it would have been growing in amongst the trees, so they would have taken them down from that and turned them into the swings.
The first school was opened in 1872 in William Pew's tin shed. Mr. Pew organised soirees to raise money for the school. They included songs, dance and sketches with the names like the Golden Shoe Dance and the 4 o'clock train. Visitors arrived from all over Auckland. Over 150 revellers would dance until dawn, entertained by performers such as the Cabbage Tree Swamp and the Cockawatoo Players.
When was Exhibition Drive open and what was its original purpose?
Okay, well actually it was, before it was officially opened as a road, it was actually a tramway, and the tramway was with tunnels, was there so that they could take supplies through to build the first dams in the area, so the Upper Nihutupu Dam. And then in 1914 there was a big exhibition on in Auckland, and it was called the Auckland Industrial, Agricultural and Mining Exhibition, and that's how Exhibition Drive got its name. The reason they wanted a nice drive was that people coming to the exhibition could come up to the Waitakeres, which they called the Blue Mountains back then, and see the beautiful bush of the Waitakere Ranges.
What would we have seen driving along Exhibition Drive in the 1920s?
Because it was, a tourist attraction, you would have seen some sightseers going for walks up there, and also there were these tour vehicles called charabancs, so there might have been tours of people going through. But the interesting thing about the drive was that you could only travel one way at a time. So Henry Atkinson is probably one of the most influential, important people for Titirangi, because he basically was responsible back in the day for actually leaving a lot of land which is there today. He came out to New Zealand in 1838. He actually met a lady on the boat that he ended up marrying, and he was already an experienced engineer when he came out.
How was Henry involved in the creation of Nihotuku reservoirs?
Well, because he was an engineer, he was very interested in the water supply. It was him who suggested where the water catchment dam should go. Because of what he did, he basically ensured that we had a good water supply right through most of the 1800s and 1900s.
When did Henry Atkinson gift the land that Titirangi Primary School now sits on?
He gifted that land in 1900, but not actually for a school, it was for a water reservoir. And back then, originally the school was in what is now South Titirangi Road. So it was a lot later that it became a school here on that land.
In the 1930s, children would make do with a piece of wood and an old tennis ball to play cricket and rounders. Pupils would visit the Bishop family one afternoon a week to listen to the wireless. This was a great novelty at the time. The children from the wealthier families would often buy an ice cream from the sweet shop afterwards.
On January the 1st, 1930, a fire started in the teacher's house. It soon spreaded along the trellis to the school. By morning, only 2 chimneys were left standing. That year, a summer holiday lasted for 4 months, while a temporary tin shed was built beside the ruin.
When and why was Lopdell House built?
Lopdell House was built in 1930, and it was built by Alec Bishop, who came from a very important family in Titirangi, and he had run a successful tea kiosk or a tea shop in that same spot, but basically decided that it would be an amazing thing to build a big hotel for people to come to.
Can you tell us about the grand opening ceremony?
Yes, at the ceremony there were a big number of guests, and they got to stay over for a ball that night, and they probably got to go up on the roof and see the roof garden that was there at that time.
Titirangi Hotel opened on November 20th, 1930, and the school children were given that day off to celebrate. When the children arrived for afternoon tea, one small girl strayed behind to look at the fancy cars parked by the brand new building. When she finally reached the entrance, the doors had shut, so she stood in the empty street and cried in bitter disappointment.
When did the Wootons plant the Acorn Avenue?
There's a road, Wootons Lane here, which is named after family. They were the first settlers here. Edward Wooton came from England, the Jersey Islands, I understand, in 1875. He brought with him some acorns, and you can see all the oaks around now. The Wooton family actually lived here, and they lived on the beach. They owned all this land. And Philip Wooton, one of the sons, he ran a freight service up to the islands from the harbour here. So he'd be running freight up to the Solomon Islands, the Rarotonga.
Can you tell us about the pirate William Hayes?
William Hayes, the pirate. He actually sailed with the Wootons on their boat that used to sail from the harbour here as far as the islands. And I know that when he died, Philip Wooton was asked to hand over his gun to his family here in New Zealand. And the gun was actually held at Mavis Fry's house up the hill here.
What was it like going to school during World War II?
You know, they dug a big shelter. I've got a photograph of it here too, you see. And that's my sister and that's me. Well, we were given little sacks and a cork we had to put in our teeth, so it was supposed to stop biting your tongue or something, I don't know. But we had an exercise that we used to have to go down, and all the boys went in one side and we went in the other side, and we did that each morning.
Do you remember the wartime marches and the songs on the playground?
Yes, I do. And we would salute the flag and sing God Save the King, because he was a king then, King George VI.
What was it like going to school during World War II?
No, I think it was, in fact, it was very interesting because there was all sorts of calamities going on which did interest us. And so it's quite amazing to have to go and hide in fairly dark air raid shelters and things like that. So it was interesting. There's quite a different attitude of students towards the war years. One student and myself dreamt up wagging school and going up onto the War Memorial Hill and actually training the gun that was posted there onto the headmaster. And we pretended to go to shoot the students all in classes. And one of the prefects said, "Hey, sir, we've got trouble here. We've got a couple of students up there in the trenches." Well, he was furious when he heard about this. He said, "Well, get them back down here. We won't have that sort of nonsense going on here." And he lost his glasses on the parade ground, on the school ground, and it smashed into many, many pieces. And so he was even more furious because he bust his glasses.
Can you tell us about the headmaster, Mr. Blender Hazard, and the deputy, Mr. Felden?
Yes, Mr. Blender Hazard and Mr. Felden, as far as I know, were both returned servicemen from the First World War, and they still were sometimes in soldier mode. So they had all us kids marching. We did figure marching, which was, we enjoyed it because it let us out of class for a while, you know. That was one of the things I always remember about them. But they also let us do country dancing too, so it was quite well-balanced exercise we got.
Please tell us about your first day at school with your twin sister Noah.
It was when the school first opened, and in our class there were chalkboards around the wall, and we each had a place where we could where we worked on the chalkboards. And there was a boy next to me called Neville. And Miss Poor had to go out for some reason or other out of the room, and she told us to be quiet. And so we got on with our work. And then Neville, he borrowed my duster. And then I wanted it back. And just for fun, he wouldn't give it back. So I jumped up, he held it up high, and I jumped up and grabbed it. And as I did that, he squealed. But just then Miss Poor came back in, so we both got the cuts. And the boys used to get more than one. They'd strap here and strap here. It depended what naughty things they did.
Would have been pretty painful.
Well, I don't recall that it was sharp. In fact, I felt quite famous because girls didn't often get strapped, but I did.
Can you tell us about the time you took your bike to Titirangi?
Tauranga, yes.
Tauranga.
A book has been produced of what we did. We did our planning at Bethel's, and I've got pictures of Bethel's where we camped in the summer holidays, and we planned all those sort of things. But we called ourselves the Green Feather Bottom Clan.
Can you tell me who the other person was?
The other person is Tony Edgar. Now Tony wrote this book, little booklet.
Did you meet any big lorries?
Oh yes, we stopped them. If we could get a lift, please. And we were cheeky enough to ask for a lift, and yes, we'd pile our bikes on top of the logs and tie them down and talk to the driver, who was always lots of fun.
How old were you when all this happened?
12.
12.
One time, Neville, Tony and I rode our bikes along Exhibition Drive, then felt our ways through the dark tunnels to Nihotupu Dam. We would climb up the steps beside the dam, then slide down the face on Nikau leaves, screaming and yelling. We made so much noise a ranger found us and was furious. This was a private area then because of water catchment. We raced back along the train track and through the tunnels to our bikes.
Tell us about your sailing adventures.
We had a beautiful little lake at Bethels where we used to camp out there, and we decided to do some sailing. And I've got a picture here of a sailing dinghy, little rubber dinghy, with the two of us sailing around on this beautiful lake.
What was your sail?
Oh, a sheet. A sheet was stuck up a bamboo pole, and the pedals were held as a boom. And when I got serious about sailing, I sailed at French Bay in the very early days of the yacht club, before they actually built the club.
1956.
And we raced against a similar fleet at Blockhouse Bay. There was a yacht club as well, and we loved it. And we sailed all over the Manukau, even over to Pukatutu Island, which was owned by the Kelleher's. We used to sail over there and have afternoon tea with them and then sail back again.
Can you tell us about your neighbour, Jack?
Yes, Jack Odlin. We're very fortunate to have a very friendly neighbour. He was a timber merchant, and he took us as children out to his Karikari farm, which is on the Lone Kauri Road. He gave us rides on his D4, which was a red bulldozer, and for children to ride on a bulldozer, that was the bee's knees. We thought that was great fun, and we rode all over the place.
And he let you change gear and turn corners?
Yes, he let me change gears on the bulldozer, pulling levers and things. It was fantastic.
About Mr. Boots' car.
Oh, Mr. Boots' bus.
Cookery lessons?
Yes. Ha. Once a fortnight we used to go down for manual training in Avondale, and the girls were there to do cooking and the boys were there to do woodwork, and we shared our class with children from Waitakere School. And when we left Avondale to come home, we used to chant. We'd say, Avondale rats, Waitakere cats, but when you meet a Titirangi, please raise your hats. And I think one of the boys made that.
Do you remember the outlines of Zigzag Track to Titirangi Beach?
Yes. The whole school would go down in a big crocodile down Zigzag Track for a swim. And the girls, you see, we used to sneak out to the toilets before we went and put our togs on, so that when we got down there, all we had to do was whoop up our dresses and we could be first in the water.
So you have more time than the boys.
Yes, yeah. But I don't think we just we didn't have lessons or anything. We didn't learn to swim or anything like that.
So you just
We
mucked around?
splashed around, yeah. That's good.
When did you move to Titirangi, or have you lived here your whole life?
Well, I'm fourth generation from Huia. My great-grandfather settled in Huia in 1893. 89 I think, and 93 he built a house there. And he had 9 sons, of which 7 of them were born down there. So my grandfather owned 100 acres down here in the valley where the Tangiwai Reserve now is. So I used to make hay when I was a little boy, or watch making hay on the Tangiwai Reserve. But during the week, for a lot of the time when I was young, we lived in Old Titirangi Road. One evening we got a ring, and my dad, I was about to go to bed, my dad said, no, you got to come with me, the cows have got out. And we had to go down and as we drove into Titirangi Township, here they were in the middle of the township, chewing on a few flowers and wandering up the street.
This is something you may be interested in. It's the progress, they call it Progress of Achievements Ready report card from 1955, Titirangi School, Primer 4, Standard 1, Mrs. Sanders. You can see here all the list of the kids in the school. There's me, Michael Carter. It had your age, etc., etc. And then it ticked off what you did and didn't do as the year went by. In the back of it, there's actually notes beside each person. Here under my one it says good at number, poor at printing. Well, both of those are still true to this day, funnily enough. And here's some photographs I've taken at Titirangi School. That's me in there. That's these. I still remember all these people here. Some of them are still around now. And that particular one is there in 1956, and I'm there in the school. That's around the back of the school. You may or may not recognise the area.
So I did bring some of my school reports with me, but they're very average. I wasn't terribly keen on school. And I think the first day of school when my mother was dropping me off, I said to her, could I go to school one day and have the next day at home? And she said, oh no, school doesn't work that way. And I thought to myself, that's what you think. So the reports are generally very average, with comments like, Christine has missed so much schooling. Unfortunately, absence has again prevented an adequate standard.
Did your time at Titirangi Primary influence your career choices?
Well, interestingly, I don't know that it's influenced my career choices, but it certainly, I think, has had a lasting impact on the way I operate, let me put it that way. And I'll tell you why. My other really strong memory is walking down Godley Road with my grandmother, who we were living with. She had come up for a parent-teachers meeting and to get my school report. She said, well, look, I've got to tell you something. You know, your report's very good, all your subjects are good, but what's written here is that you're far too bossy. And, you know, I think since then, and I've often been in management or leadership positions, but I've always had this thing about not trying to be too domineering or bossy.
In your time at Titirangi Primary, what did you do for fun?
A lot of it was outdoors stuff. Birthday parties, would do things like bobbing for apples, sack races, three-legged races, those sorts of things, playing catch and all the typical things that kids did outside as opposed to inside, because we didn't have computers or those sorts of things.
Please tell us the Māori dance classes with Mrs. Tuaro.
We didn't call it kapahaka back then, as you probably know it today, but we really enjoyed learning all sorts of things about Māoritanga, so action dances, haka, stick dances, poi dances, and we all thoroughly enjoyed it.
Can you tell us some of the landmark changes in Māori education policy over the years?
I think that the Māori language has grown within schools, namely Titirangi. The culture is more widely seen and accessible by all students. And in the 1990s, the Māori language became an official language of New Zealand. I think the core values of the school are based on tikanga Māori, which has its similarities throughout the South Pacific, with direct reference to akotahi, manaakitanga and whanaungatanga.
Our school sits at the edge of the great forest of Terewa. Terewa was the chief of the Turehu tribe. Many years ago, Terewa decided that the island of Rangitoto needed a new home. He waded into Te Tai o Rehua, gathered Rangitoto up in his arms and carried it across the mountains. He dropped it deep in the cool waters of the Waitemata, where it stands to this day.
This is called a woody, and this was what Mr. McLaren's car looked like. When we went to an away match with the soccer team, the entire soccer team would go into the back of that van. We were squished in, there would be 12 of us, 11 players and a reserve, and we'd all pile into the back of the van. No seatbelts, nothing like that. If someone scored a goal, they'd get to sit in the front with Mr. McLaren. And off we'd go to Green Bay and other places in the neighbourhood for our matches.
Who are the people you remember best?
I think I spent about 3 years in Mr. Hurst's class, and that was a very happy time in his class. He was quite interested in science, and I remember we'd all trooped down to the very lower field once to have a demonstration of how slowly sound waves move. He had erected a big iron pole which he clanged with a hammer. And we had to raise our hands at the other end of the field when we heard the sound.
How long did it take you to get to the school?
Well, when I was a little kid and the road was still gravel from Lopdell house all the way, and my dad used to bring me in an old army jeep sometimes, 3/4 of an hour. That's on the days, well, not often, but we did chase some wild pigs through Mill Bay once in his vehicle on our way, well, I think it was on our way home.
What was it like on the school bus?
It was really old-fashioned, I should say, and not that I'm that old, I don't think, but the bus was not like your modern bus. The seats were just, they were upholstered, but on steel frames and all that sort of stuff. The bus was so old, one of them, that when we went round a corner, the back axle was moving so much that it would rub on the inner guard. And if you look down and you're in the right seat, you could see the wheel just going around, and if it did it for too long, it would start to smoke.
a chance to bring any pets into school?
There was a time we used to have pet day now and again. We had some pigs at home, and one had little piglets. Often they can have 12, 14 piglets, and they never all survive. And there was a little dead one, so I brought the dead piglet in, but the teacher wasn't very happy with that, so I had to leave it in the box and take it home when I went.
What was it like growing up in Africa?
Congo I remember more vividly because I was older when we were in Congo, and it's beautiful. It's most amazingly, and the Congo River is one of the great rivers of the world, and it was, there was a picnic place we used to go to where there was a hippopotamus. This was on the French Congo side of the river. There was a bar there. This hippopotamus, there were photos of it coming up to the bar and, then pouring a bottle of water or something stronger into its mouth. And if we were out on a canoe, we were always watching to see if the hippopotamus would come up beside us.
What have you done for a living?
I went to pharmacy school and trained to be a pharmacist, which was a chemist. And then I worked in the pharmacy up in Titirangi in the village. Eventually bought it, so I was there for 46 years.
Was there any medical emergencies?
Yeah, we had to deal with quite a few because in a pharmacy they often come to you first. So I remember a girl from working over the supermarket came across. She had to put a finger on the bacon slicer and chopped the top off her finger and was breathing fairly badly and came into the shop to get stitched up, which we couldn't do, of course. We did it best we could.
Can you tell us about the time that your brother Roger made a film?
My brother was in that class together with Martin Crowe. You may have heard of Martin Crowe. He was already becoming well known by the time he was in year 6. And he could basically hit anything. Someone pitched the softball at him. He hit it with a king hit, and it went into, and the story goes that it went through the classroom window, and then Mr. Hurst comes out of the classroom looking very angry. Brian was, I guess today you'd call him a geek. He was right into technology. He also built a computer in the class, and that's streets ahead of its time. You could ask questions, put in push buttons, and get the answers to the questions.
Did you have any pets?
We had a cat called Samantha, and she was called Samantha from the Bewitched TV program, which my brother and I loved.
Are there any funny stories with your cat?
I seem to remember dressing the cat up in doll's clothes, and including the bonnet, squishing her into a little cane pram that I had, pushing all the sheets down very tight so she couldn't get out, and rolling her up and down the driveway. But she did love me still.
And was there any unusual customers?
Well, we were just talking before about the most unusual custom was the chickens that came in. And they waltzed in the shop. We've had a few cats in the shop. Birds used to fly in. We had one person who drove their car through the front of the shop inadvertently, put their foot on the accelerator instead of the brake. So the shop was set up differently than it is now and came through the front door. That was an unusual customer that we didn't expect.
Do you have any special interests or hobbies related to life in that area?
But one of the things that's really fascinated me was the water, and I got involved in scuba diving. So that's been my passion for 40 odd years.
And what's your favourite diving place?
Favourite diving place in New Zealand is the Poor Knights Island, which is out of Whangarei. The most beautiful water because it's sort of what they call semi-tropical, so it's got a bit of cold water from New Zealand, a bit of warm water coming down from up in the islands, so you get all the great variation of fish. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And of course the Pacific Islands is my favourite spot. We can go to the Solomon Islands and in Vanuatu in particular. We went up there every year to dive in a wreck called the President Coolidge, which is in Santo in Vanuatu. And we did a lot of diving there, and I can show you some bits and pieces off that wreck if you'd like to have a look at some stage.
What else can you remember about being in Brian Hast's class?
For the final year at primary school, when it was the centennial, I remember we had made a film to commemorate the 100-year anniversary, and I think we'd done a sort of pretend classroom lesson with a slate and chalk, and then we'd gone outside, and I remember he had us sitting in a circle playing a game which I think is called Duck Duck Goose. He just came up with great projects like that to get the kids really excited about things.
Good morning, children. Good morning, ma'am. It isn't much to ask for you three to say it properly. Good morning, children. Good morning, ma'am.
What advice would you like to give children growing up today?
Really enjoy school, get as much out of it as you can, including things like this. I mean, we never had the opportunity to do, like, learn to make films. Look out and engage. Try to get the school to connect you up with other children who are not part of this community, for you to hear their stories as well.
The village is growing bigger and bigger. The bins are overflowing with too much plastic. People sit on the ground begging for money. All the buildings look the exact same.
Maybe a farmer. I love rats and mice. I want to have experience with cute, smelly animals. Maybe an actor. Boom, blood, drama, death, funny. You're on a big screen in the spotlight.
In the future, there will be walking and biking lanes, more cafes for more caffeine. Our skins will be burning from the boiling hot sun. It's a good time to go away, maybe to Whangmata.
Future career. Up in the sky so high, I am flying to countries for free. Flying in the sky sounds fun because I like being up high, taking control of the cockpit.
In 5 years to come, Titirangi School will be different. The classrooms will be bigger and the playgrounds will be crowded with children. People on the courts will be playing sports. In 5 years to come, Titirangi School will be different.
To get a robo dog. It's soft, it's cuddly, it's cute. It can even hover over the ground, shimmering in the sun. You will zoom, you will rush, you will sprint to get a robo dog.
The future is coming. Destroy all of Earth because rubbish bins will take over. Every car will be electric. Next thing you know, some people will be flying. There will be no more tea and everyone will be crying. School will be closed and every kid will be saying, yay! There will be no more coffee. There will be no more life. The future is coming.
My dream job. Ladder of times, dreams will come and go. I will analyse and unlock discoveries of the world. I won't sit and wait for answers to come to me as I live day by day, living for my dream.
Cartoons blast out of the paper. Paintbrush of memories rush down the page. Ignoring all the troubles in the past, making room to create a future.
Flowers are blooming and trees are sprouting. Titirangi will grow bigger with more shops. All roads will expand. Titirangi will be a superior place to live.
Into the future. Soon enough, tech has had enough.
being overused and abused. Robots take over, no need for humans, as the new men demolished, superhumans polished. The world has been over-damaged, it had to be bandaged. The end, I guess.
Grow up playing basketball, mechanic working on cars. Work every day except for the weekends. One day all cars are going to become electric, waiting to change the world's perspective.
Technology's evolving and maybe revolving, making new inventions, lots of contention. Changing humanity, so much calamity. Might be the end of us, but no one bothers to discuss.
The impact of climate change. Polluted airs filled with dreads, most people dead. Nobody cares about what they do to the environment. Plants are now drooping, plastic waste polluting, grimy gutters filled with bottles. Soon enough, the world may end, gobbled up by this climate crisis as we descend. Climate change. Melting ice, water rising. Animals drowning, humans dying. Kids growing up, all distraction. The question is, how will we stop it?
The earth, lush and green, our home. Everywhere you look are all shades of peaceful greens. The mountains, big, grey and rocky, with specks of green appearing. The icy snow settles on top of the sharp, pointy mountains that scrape the clouds as white as the moon in the night sky. The colossal, powerful dinosaurs that ruled the earth before us, a home for all generations. The vast waters surrounding planet Earth, bringing life for the inhabitants, lush and green, our home.
In the future, we will travel through time and space. We shall be the smartest creatures in the universe. We can go back to the time of dinosaurs. We can save past loved ones. The future is a beautiful and wonderful place.
What did you enjoy most about this project?
I enjoy doing the stop motion by taking lots of pictures.
Did you find anything difficult about the stop motion?
Probably the shaping of our props was the hardest bit for me.
Mostly how much you should move fish. You shouldn't just go right across the page. You should just go tiny bits.
Yeah.
For example, this. And go click.
Wow.
Excellent demo.
Well, I pretty liked drawing the cows and cutting out the fence, and also making the characters, which was actually pretty fun.
I liked working together and directing it. I think I was pretty good. Yeah. Well, I really liked learning about the people that we were interviewing because they had so much cool like history behind them, behind the school and everything, and it was just really interesting to hear what they had to say.
Sounds great.
I enjoyed hearing about everyone's, lives and hearing about Titirangi.
Would you like to learn more about filmmaking and animation?
Yes, because I'm very into camera wax.
I enjoyed cutting out characters with my teammates.
Yeah, I would like to learn about the animation, how professional animation people get it so precise each time.
Would you like to learn more about filmmaking or animation?
Yeah, I think I would. I think it would be really cool to make a documentary.
What was it like being an interviewer?
I felt really nervous when I was about to do it, but when you start asking the questions just come into your head and you just know what to ask in a way.
I found it hard to agree with my team because I wanted to do stuff differently.
What new skills have you learnt?
Arts and crafts a bit more.
Yeah. If we could run the project again, what would you change or improve?
The team that I worked with.